All this is rather physical. Maybe it shouldn't be that way, but at the same time it is that way, so we have to face it. We have to face this wonderful experience, the experience which we have lost when in a strange manner of some kind we sort of exiled the gods back to the sky and left them there. Today we look for them in very rarefied atmosphere, but we have no idea of our ancient Roman brethren who had a couple of these deities under his hearthstone most of the time, and under the name of the Lares and Penates always left out a little food for them every evening. He conversed with them. He told his troubles to them. Perhaps it was idolatry. Perhaps he was not too wise a man about it all. But there was something that made the gods seem near. Something that made it less necessary for him to search desperately for his spiritual consolation. He did not feel that it was necessary for him to renounce the world, that it was necessary for him to suffer, that it was necessary for him to mortify the flesh, or to perform strange and extraordinary rites of purification. The gods of antiquity were not demanding gods. For the most part, they were rather charitable, genial beings who seemed to have a wonderful understanding of man's natural weaknesses, and at the same time a paternal regard in which it might be that they could lead him to a nobler way of living. But ritual meant that heaven and earth could meet in any great festival, in any great solemn event. Values, too, were differently distributed. Instead of spiritual values being on one side completely separate and material values on the other totally isolated, these values flowed together. There was no separation in them at all. There was no problem of the individual trying to decide whether it was more important to live well here or hereafter. He felt the natural fact that he lived here and hereafter always. But the hereafter was no distant place he went when he died. The hereafter was merely a step into a world of living dream and vision, a world of wonders, a world of magnificent things that were also tangible. He did not live in a world of physical things that were tangible and spiritual things that were intangible. By ritualism, the invisible was also tangible. The invisible became just as near to him and as real to him as his horses, his cattle, and his fields. He did not have to deny everything that he saw in order to believe everything he could not see. He could see nearly everything. So out of the pomp and circumstance of a probably rather corrupt Athenian election, he could pass quietly into the Orphic sanctuary where nothing was corrupt. He could live in a world in which that which was not corrupt was supported by the corrupt, where individuals who were not good paid homage to that which was good, where these politicians, having variously profaned their offices, were literally and actually afraid to enter the sanctuary maintained by the state. Their gods were so near, and the danger of retribution was so close that the corrupted man did not dare to worship. This is an interesting difference to our way of things. And yet this same corrupted man did not dare not to worship. He could not leave his faith behind, deny his immortal soul, and live as he pleased with a good hope. These things were not possible. There was an entirely different dimension of living. Unfortunately, some of the ancients have left to us a description or definition of some of these rites. Not complete, because such would have been contrary to their obligations, but in the mysterious nocturnal rites of Osiris in an island in the Nile, Iamblichus describing the initiation of the Mother of the Gods, and many other similar passages, including the initiation described by Apuleius in the Metamorphosis, we see that all the thinking in connection with these great ritualistic processes, this thinking led inevitably to the temple. It led the individual, regardless of his natural passions or desires, to view the inevitable eternal significance of the sacred life. When the young people of Athens reached a certain age, and it was rather young at some times, because we know that children as young as 5 and 6 years of age were initiated into the Eleusinian mysteries, that these young people, starting out in life, perhaps not even yet in the public school, they were not taken to some place where they heard sermons or heard learned discussions of sin beyond their contemplation, or where they could learn some of the better lessons involved therein. These children were taken into the great spectacle of the gods. They realized that heaven and earth met in a tremendous homage paid by man to the eternal. That the greatest artistry, the greatest skill, the greatest mind, all of these forms of greatness were dedicated to the gods, and that skill and wisdom and love and veneration adorned the ancient altars with garlands of great beauty and great richness. These children found, when they entered sanctuary, not children only, they found there the wise and the learned whom they admired. They found the great scientist worshipping humbly beside the common shopkeeper. They saw that no man became so wise that he outgrew the love to worship the gods. He learned that no amount of material prosperity could compensate for being rejected by the mysteries. That a person not regarded as fit to enter the sanctuary of the gods was not fit for any man on earth to associate with. It is understandable that under such a psychology, under such a concept, that the value of divine things was driven home, and the young person grew up to realize that these sacred ceremonies were part of his own maturity, that they were not something he should ever be ashamed of or apologize for, or that he would ever be ridiculed because he was superstitious enough to accept them. They were the way of life. They were the proper and reasonable thing for every person to experience, and out of this experience to build a life as noble as personal ability would permit. Now, as Pike points out, ritualism being a form of symbolism, the literal or obvious interpretation is seldom the true one. Ritualism, like sacred or scriptural writing, is a very difficult thing because it must have many meanings. It must be able to meet and console the spirit of the simple man. It must also be forever beyond the understanding of the wisest. Ritual, therefore, like symbolism, has no limitation upon it other than the limitation of the interpreting mind or consciousness. What it stands for in sure and complete substance, no man knows, because no man has ever exhausted its meanings. He has never come to the point where he can say, this means no more. As veil he lifts, he finds veil upon veil behind. Always the symbol lures him on. Always the ritual reveals new meaning, like some magnificent tapestry. In this way, many levels of thinkers were brought into the concept of the great ritualistic procedure. Hippocrates of Kos, the father of medicine, performing the rituals of initiation, beheld in the splendor of them the workings of God, the great physician. He saw all the elements of the great drama unfold in terms of healing. Cicero, a legislator, a great statesman and an orator, declared that as he stood in the presence of these great ceremonies, he became for the first time aware of the divinity of jurisprudence. He stood in the presence of the ever-living, ever-moving harmony of universal law, and he recognized it. The rituals were lawful. They were the great unfolding of the principles of integrity in nature. A poet found in them the wonderful meters of great verse. The philosopher experienced in them the tremendous depths of metaphysical speculation. The mystic found there in the strange symbolism, the simple and open road to the heart of reality. Each brought himself. Each received that which was suitable to his need. And the great drama of the gods went on, never pausing, always impelling the individual to the recognition of the total sublimity, the total sufficiency of the heavenly plan. Now, man, taking this mood upon himself, experienced something. He experienced certainties perhaps which he himself bestowed, but which nevertheless remained certainties. He did not argue with learning. He did not debate with the wise. He did not deny, protest, criticize, condemn. He was silent. And in this silence he was open to the strange rites themselves. He felt them as some wonderful pageantry, moving in, controlling, taking over, and impressing him with the total impact of a total truth. In this way, Pike felt that symbolism through ritual was of the greatest practical importance in education. He felt that there were inevitable and invaluable realities which died in the very process of explaining them. That we took thoughts, put them into words, and killed them. That we found no way to keep the spirits alive while we perpetuated the ideas. The spirit died, lost in words, lost in man's semantic blunderings, lost in the difficulties of transmission, lost in the fact that words that mean much to us may mean little to others. Thus, education, learning, can by books and rote transmit the 3 R's, but cannot transmit a 4th R, religion. That cannot reveal or release a 5th R, reality. These things have to be found in another way. Man, searching for these values in his daily life, finds them by the very fact of living. He is not told them. He discovers them out of their own need, in his own living and in his own daily existence. So by the degrees of years, he is initiated into wisdom. By having walked these paths, performed these rites of human adjustment, the individual begins